Intelligence².com.
Okay, I'm going to open this up to questions from the audience. We have microphones, I believe. What is a question? A question is a sentence with a question mark at the end of it. It isn't a speech. And if I detect a speech, I'll just cut you off, all right?
And I'm sure that most of the questions will be literary.
Yeah, of course they will, yeah. So we have...
Can we have some more light on the audience?
Yeah, because I can't actually see the audience.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, okay.
If I may break Linda's rules for 2 seconds, can I just say what an enormous honour and privilege it is to have you here in London, what an extraordinary book To the End of the Land is, and obviously all your other books as well. I promise now. Am I allowed to ask 2 questions if I ask them really quickly?
Yes, you can ask 2 questions.
First is very much literary. You were very honest in the book about the fact that just as Aura, in a sense, is trying to stave off the reality and of that machinery, you also felt that perhaps by writing this book, you would protect your son. And it's unspeakable that that wasn't the case, but I wondered if you felt that literature had failed you somehow, that you lost your faith in it afterwards, and if I could be very bold and add an adjunct to that, just that if you did, it's a gift to humankind what you wrote. So in a sense, just as Aura gave birth to Avram, in a sense, you've given birth to this extraordinary testament of humanity that we should all live by, I think.
Well, thank you.
But the question was, did you ever lose faith in literature? Did you feel it had let you down after your son died?
No, you know, it's hard for me to speak about what happened, but I never thought that literature is bulletproof, you know. There is only this wish that by writing we can, in a way, re-articulate reality. I never really believed that I can protect him with words. It takes more than words to protect a human being or a society. It was more an act of being with him as much as I can. I didn't feel that literature has failed me. In a way, on the contrary, because, you know, I was writing this book for more than 3 years, and then it happened, and then a day after the Shiva is the 7 days of lamenting that we have in Judaism. The day after, I went back writing, and I went back writing because, you know, after something like that happens to a person, nothing is taken for granted anymore. Nothing. Everything is re-asked and examined. Even the question of staying alive. I don't think I say here something that no one can think of. And in a strange way, the solid place that I had was the story that was almost finished by then. And I remember going back, and in the first day I was able to stay in the place where I'm writing. I was able to stay for an hour, and then I felt I can't take it anymore, and I went back home, and the next day it was another 10 minutes and another, and I remember at times stopping writing and asking myself, are you nuts? I mean, all around you, a world has collapsed, and you are sitting here insisting on a word or a phrase or a metaphor. But I must say that when I found the right word or the right metaphor, there was a kind of a slow relief, because there was a feeling of doing something right in a world that became all wrong. A slight tikkun, we say tikkun in Hebrew, it's correction, it's the Kabbalic term for correcting something in the world. And I must say that I'm not talking about the results of my writing, not at all, but the place of writing in my life since then became more essential. It is really a home. It is really a home. It always has been, but now there is another bond I feel between me and the act of writing. And, you know, the power to invent after something like that happened, to invent, to fantasize, to infuse life and warmth and love and humor and imagination into characters. It was a way of, you know, acting against the gravity of grief. And in a way it was against all temptations. It was a way of choosing life. And yeah, that's what I can say.
We have, somebody has the microphone, I believe. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
I also have a question about the ending, because it was very surprising that you chose to put yourself in the end, and the connection that is made in the end, and the impact that is, you know, that falls on the reader's heart when I realize that I'm reading your journey, and that it is to some extent real, or very, very, very unreal. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that choice to go to the personal, to the very, very personal, and if this is in some way what you were talking about as like a cure, or like to heal the macrocosmos through the microcosmos of the private.
Yeah, I hesitated a lot before putting this epilogue of one page, but the book, when it was published in Israel, it came out when really everybody knew about what has happened to my family and to me. And I thought that I just need to say it in order to neutralize it in a way. And to say it in very few lines, in a very straightforward way about what has happened, and mentioning that the story was written beforehand, and that what has changed is only the echo chamber of reality, not the story itself. Because I decided immediately after what happened, I decided not to change the story. That the story deserves that I will remain loyal to the line, not to change it, not to put other things from the outside. And just in order to make that clear, I wrote this epilogue.
Have more hands up? Yeah.
Hi, this is not a literary question. 10 days ago, I was at a discussion with a former Israeli minister, and he was asked why...
Who is he?
I'd rather not say. He was asked why Israel finds it impossible to make any political progress. And his answer, very passionately, was the political system makes it impossible. Although he had criticism for almost every politician in the country, his main criticism was of the political system itself. Do you agree? And if not, what do you think is the real reason Israel finds it impossible to make political progress?
Yeah. It's partly a true reason and partly an excuse. Benjamin Netanyahu has a very right-wing coalition. Actually, it's the most extreme right-wing coalition in the West today. And we regard ourselves to be part of the West, in case you wondered. But it's an excuse. You know, a prime minister has to decide whether he prefers the future of his country or the future of his coalition. And of course, Netanyahu makes his decision. It's very obvious what he chooses. And I think this is dangerous for our future. I believe that if he decides to act according to the interests of the future of Israel, he will have another coalition, maybe not as strong as the one he has now, which has a majority of, I think, 80 Knesset members, but there will be another, reshuffling of forces, and he will have a majority to carry out the inevitable steps needed in order to have peace. What worries me, and not only me, of course, is the fact that there is no status quo. Maybe he wants to gain more year or more 2 years until the next elections, what's the point of these elections if what only he wishes for is to stay in the same situation? But while he is gaining a year or two, he is losing Israel, losing the society in Israel, because the more we do not have a political solution, the more people turn towards extremism, fundamentalism, nationalism, racism. It's inevitable. It happens in every society in our situation. People are looking for answers, for comfort, for their despair and their frustration and their anxiety regarding the future. And there are parties who provide them with simple, very clear-cut answers, which have nothing to do with the complexity of the situation and the nuances of this situation. And since there is no status quo, what we shall get after some more years of this deep freeze of action on behalf of the government, we shall get an Israel that will be unable to turn towards peace even when peace will be at reach. Benjamin Netanyahu, after formatting the mind of the people with his enormous rhetoric abilities, convincing them for decades now, not only in his position as a prime minister, but even before that, convincing them that there is no partner, that we are doomed to fight, that all our future we shall be in this situation. If time comes and he will be forced, maybe by the Americans, maybe by events, to change his attitudes, he will not be able to do it. He will not have constituency to support him. And what happens to our society and this growing despair and this detachment from the events and the feeling that nothing can be changed, this is so much more destructive for Israel. This is one of the main reasons to achieve peace. We need peace, and when I say peace, I don't have this naive dream of us and the Palestinians walking hand in hand towards the sunset. It will not be like that. Let me tell you right now. If there is peace, it means that a heavy compromise has been done by us and by the Palestinians. And a heavy compromise means a lot of frustrated, vengeful, and rageful fanatics and fundamentalists on both sides. And they will do everything that they can in order to assassinate this fragile peace. And I am not sure that both leaders, the Israeli and the Palestinians, who will strike this deal of peace, that they will be clever enough, courageous enough to contain these violations of the future peace with the deep need to maintain it and to keep it. How shall they be able to do it? I really don't know, especially in societies that are so highly traumatized, so highly suspicious and inflammable and hateful towards each other. But these are problems to be solved later. We are still, unfortunately, not in this situation. What I'm sure that if there is no peace, if there is not resumption of the dialogue between us and the Palestinians, the situation would deteriorate rapidly. And the only chance of us, I'll talk of us, the Israelis, even though, peace is important for both of us, and I deeply wish for the Palestinians to have peace, to know what does it mean to live your life in peace, to put all your talents and abilities and capacities that they have as a society, to put them in the building up of their nation, and to be able to raise their children without the shadow of us and the shadow of the occupation and all this distortion, and just to have normal life of dignity as people, as human being who deserves to have their place in the world, to have their state, their sovereign, independent state. But as an Israeli and as a Jew, I know that having peace will allow us, and this is the only way that can allow us to have ourselves as a state, and to have a future, and to have our place that might become at last, after so many years of being there in the Middle East, might become the home that it should become. Israel should be our home, and yet it's nor a home, neither a shelter. It's one of the most dangerous places for a Jew to live. Only having peace will allow us to have it as a home, to have a sense of future and sequence of generations there. And being able to be integrated in a more harmonious way into reality, not to live in this high voltage reality, to be integrated into some normality, normal political, historic reality, and to have something that I like to call it solidity of existence, that we never really felt, because all the time our existence is so fragile, so questionable. All the time people ask about the existence of Israel. It's the only country on earth that people dare to doubt the right of Israel to exist. They will not doubt the right of an atrocious country like North Korea to exist. Only when it comes to Israel, there is this slight confusion, I will say, if I want to describe it in a positive way, regarding, what is it? Is it a state? Is it a story? Because Israel is always regarded as a story, a larger-than-life story. And I'm fed up by being a larger-than-life story, because I think that even an individual, but also a country, a nation that is larger than life, in a way is not rooted harmoniously, normally, into the course of life and the course of history. I want to be just another unique story of life like the English are, or the Egyptians or the Chinese are. No more than that. No less, but no more than that. All these can be achieved only when we have peace. Only then Israel will be able to start the very long, difficult journey towards more normalization. This is why we need peace. It's not only questions of territory. It's not question of religion. It is the deep questions of our identity and the key to our survival there in the very unpredictable, dangerous, and hostile to Israel region, the Middle East. Thank you. Thank you.
I see, yes.
What's your biggest regret in life, and what do you long for most in life?
I guess we have time until midnight. I try to understand these things by writing. I must say, well, let me not answer regarding the question of longing. It's too painful. But regarding regrets, I take things as they are, as they come. And if they happened, even if I made mistakes, probably I was meant to make this specific mistake. At least it's mine. No, that's my answer. Not too many regrets. What are yours?
Can you explain, because I find
where is the person who asked? Can you raise your hand?
He's just there.
Ah, yes, okay, thank you.
Can you explain the Israeli intransigence towards the settlers? Is there some secret explanation which no one outside Israel can understand?
When you say intransigence, you mean...
Fixed position.
Sorry?
Fixed position.
Right.
Incapacity to compromise.
Right, okay.
Thank you. It's easy and hard to explain. I think that in a way, when the settlements movement started, it created or revitalized in the heart of many, many Israelis this old ancient spirit of the pioneer Zionists, the beginning of the Jewish settlement in the land of Israel before the state of Israel was created. And this highly, high ideologist reality and devotion and all those good values, and people didn't notice that all these values are implemented in the wrong place. Gradually over the years, because of this slight feeling even of inferiority in front of these idealists, most Israeli governments have agreed and approved all what settlers did. They came after them and gave the stamp. Now, some of the governments did it because it suited their purposes. Ariel Sharon, I think in the 70s, has already planned exactly the places where settlements would be created, just in the very crucial points that will make any future withdrawal impossible, or will make any future border between us and the territories, the occupied territories, impossible. So we shall have in a way to annex them. The situation is now that in spite of the fact that they are only something like 300,000 or 400,000 people, they hijacked Israel. We are all hostages of them. We are in a situation that because of this small minority, Israel is incapable of achieving peace. As I said before, the situation is more complicated. Yes, I'm talking now only about our part. We can talk at length about the part of the Palestinians and their sharing the complexity of the situation and the place where it has reached by now. But the settlers, whom I regarded for years as really an existential danger to us in Israel, in the sense that they prevent us from reaching the point of starting to have this normality that I spoke of earlier. They are the strongest political lobby in Israel. You remember probably the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza Strip in 2005, which was a huge trauma in Israel. They made it into a trauma because they knew that they have to burn it in the consciousness of the Israelis so that the settlements in the West Bank will never be uprooted. I have to admit that right now I have to accept the idea that any future solution between us and the Palestinians will include settlements block. There are 3 blocks of settlements that probably Israel does not have the ability to evacuate right now. There will be swap of land. The Palestinians will get until the last centimeter of territory that we have occupied, but I do not see any future government in Israel that will be able to evacuate the settlements. I say it sorrowfully. I think it will create a very dangerous and explosive situation in the future. Maybe we shall have to start thinking about a reality in which they will become Palestinian citizens in Palestine. Not a very preferable solution, but it's very hard to see how we solve this problem. There will be many marginal and extreme settlements that will be evacuated. We are talking about something like 80,000 people that will have to be evacuated. But in a way, we have lost this battle. Yes, on the blocks of the settlement. In the Geneva Accord, it was agreed upon by both parties, the Israel and the Palestinians, that the blocks of settlements would remain.
Can I just follow up on that? There's a sort of growing consensus in liberal left-wing opinion in the West that the two-state solution is over and that we are moving inexorably to a one-state solution?
Yeah, I heard this idea. I deeply do not believe in this option. I think that both Israel and Palestine deserve and yearn to be in their own state, separated from each other, separated from the conflict, going back to understand their own identity, not always in terms of war and hostility and clash of identities. I cannot see how the Palestinians and the Israelis, who for a century now are so deeply against each other and demonizing each other, how they start to function in a productive way in one political entity. I mean, I would love to believe in it. I mean, it suits more my nature as a human being to believe that such things are possible. It's really hard for me to believe that it is possible. I look at what happens now in Belgium. So in Belgium, who lives in the heart of West Europe, who for 200 years never experienced a shot of a pistol, not even a gun, at each of the different components, the flames and the balloons. And they want to split, and they cannot stand each other, and they want their identity. Our area, who is so explosive and violent, it's impossible. It is just not a real solution. It's counterproductive. No, it will not work.
Yeah.
The Arab Spring changes the entire region for the last year. And I wonder how you see how it influences Israel. Maybe the Israeli summer, the tent movement was also in a way a result of it. But do you also think that the Israeli left or intellectuals, also individuals, should reach out to the new, all the new forces, democratic forces that come up in the surrounding countries, or is it too early to even get in touch?
Yeah. First, I was deeply moved by this revolution of the Tahrir Square in 25th January. I mean, the government and many Israelis were terrified because it's always more comfortable to deal with one dictator who can impose his will on his people, and he can, provide you with what you want. I think for the long run, it's always better to deal with a democratic society. But this is the great question, which is still unanswered and unsolved. Will Egypt become a real democracy? Or what we have witnessed was only one-round democracy in which you throw out the old dictator regime and you reinstate a new one, which is also dictatorial. You know that just last Friday there was a big demonstration in Tahrir Square because the people who protested in January, suddenly they feel betrayed. Because what they get now is another very cunning camouflage dictatorship by the army, by the people who are loyal to the army. And the army was a very strong body in Egypt. And almost every officer who ended his service got some important benefits from the army and from the regime, and they are loyal to the regime. So it'll be very, very complicated. I spoke with some Egyptian writers that I met some months ago, and they were euphoric. I never saw them like that. For example, it was the first time that they have agreed to be seen publicly with an Israeli writer, and I felt it's part of this new spirit. And I asked them worriedly, what if, Islamic Brother take over? What if the army in one or other disguise take over? And they say, no, the people will not accept it again. The people paid so much for their democracy that they will continue fight. I wish for them that it will happen, but I mean, I don't really know, I cannot answer you if Egypt is prepared for what democracy really means. Democracy is not the ruling of the majority. but it is the caring for the right of different minorities. This is the heart of democracy for me. And I wish for them that they will be able, to guarantee the rights of women, which I think their status in Arab countries is outrageous. This is part of the terrible situation of Arab societies and Arab countries. Will they be protective to the rights of the non-Muslims, of homosexuals, of all the minorities? If this is the case, then really it will be a new spring, but we all have to wait and to see it. I agree with you that the Israeli spring, this new wave of demonstrations, social demonstrations, it has been inspired by what happened in Arab countries. This is for sure. Young people realize that through the Facebook that they can unite and gather many people and bring them to act. Well, in that sense, from being the people of the book, we are now the people of the Facebook, but it's not bad.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
I also spent time at the Sheikh Jarrah protest last year, and one of the things that really struck me was how weak, emasculated, and illiberal the Israeli left is. And it seems to me that the degree to which that is true also reflects, also bodes ill for prospects for peace, because you can't have a strong peace movement if you don't have a strong left wing in a society. So I wondered if you could speak about the role of the Israeli left in terms of the continuation of the conflict rather than the cessation of it.
Israeli left flourished for the last time in the weeks after the Camp David agreement and was assassinated with Rabin and with the wave of the terror bombs within Israel and the lynch in Ramallah against 2 Israeli soldiers. This, in a moment, surfaced so many primal anxieties and terrified behavior. You could have felt how all the society entrenched like a fist. And old traumas surfaced. And it is so difficult, and maybe many don't want to do, to distinguish between the real dangers that we face and the echoes of past traumas and past fears. This is what people like Avigdor Lieberman feeds on, this inability to separate between the fears. You are talking about the Israeli society who is a terrified society, terrified, paralyzed, and as I've said, unable to do what it takes to do in order to save itself. In such conditions, believe me, and I tried, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to turn the heart and the minds of people. You cannot talk to them about prospects to the future. You cannot really talk to them about how future peace will look like or about giving trust in their enemies when bombs are exploding and even when bombs are not exploding, because in the last 2.5 years, there is almost no terror acts carried out from the West Bank. There are Qassams missiles shot from the Hamas in the south of Israel. It is just impossible to do it. Now, of course, we all would like to believe that we can really change the world. I know our limitation. What we can do, what we must insist on, is just keeping this tunnel open between us and the Palestinians, keeping this alternative open, that there is another option for us to live in this region. It's hard to believe that we can achieve more than that. I would have loved to answer you that we can, turn reality upside down. We cannot. Right now, we cannot. It's such a fossilized society right now that the only ones who will be able to change it will come from the outside, only from out of Israel, only pressure from mainly the United States, which less and less seem interested in that. I spoke with some people from the administration of Barack Obama, who, by the way, read To the End of the Land, and I wish that he got some new vision of our situation, how terrible our situation is there, something that maybe cannot get through analysis of his diplomats. And the administration, Barack Obama now says that he is willing to mediate and to put pressure only when the two parties are mature and come to him to ask for his help to mediate. They will not come voluntarily. They don't have this function anymore. They need someone from the outside, and it can be only President Obama, to put them together in one room and metaphorically knock their heads together until they start talking. Because the final lines of the solution are very well known to every reasonable Israeli and Palestinian. Everyone knows what are the final lines of the concession of the other side, except for the fanatic, the fundamentalist. So it is only a question of how much time we lose until then and how much blood will be shed. These are the only two questions.
I'm afraid we must wrap up. I've been told that we have to be out of here at 8:30 sharp. I'd like to thank David. You will be able to hear a little bit more of him tomorrow morning because I believe he's being interviewed on the Today programme. Is that correct? Today programme? Or it may be it's not live, is it? So
it's not live, yeah.
So I think maybe going out later in the week, but he will be on the Today programme at some point this week. I'd like to thank David for coming, and I'd like to thank the audience for its intelligent and often literary questions without any speeches. Please go and buy To the End of the Land if you haven't already, and his other work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.